I have made 2 features, a web series, and some shorts. And last year I did a nonfiction sort of how-to web series. So I don't know if you want to count that also, but most of my stuff is fiction. They are all political on some level, I think. I think all art is political, whether the person who's creating it intends it to be or not. Usually they're all related in some way to something I'm going through. Even Three Trembling Cities, even though I'm not an immigrant, it was something I was feeling very strongly about. I still feel strongly about. So those are kind of, I guess, very big scale commonalities that the work has. In terms of the things that I'm most interested in, the stories that I'm most interested in telling, I'm usually very interested in the outsider's perspective. So, you know, I've written scripts where the main characters are witches in a society that hunts witches, or are undocumented immigrants, or are aliens trying to pose as humans because they're scared of humans for good reason, because we can be very horrible sometimes. So yeah, I'm usually, that's kind of where I'm starting from, I guess. I'm looking at the perspective that I don't see as often, maybe, or, you know, or a perspective that's not mine necessarily. And I'm trying to jump into that perspective and tell a story from that perspective. I don't know
the
if this
story,
is helpful at all,
kind of the
but that's
story of the underdog, right? I mean,
yeah,
you know, undocumented immigrants trying to survive being chased down by government people, not literally that they're being chased, but I just mean they're trying to keep going. And you're supporting people who are struggling in the world by making these films. But I know that you also have delved into the sci-fi world a lot. And I think you're writing a couple of science fiction novels, if I'm not mistaken. So I wanted to talk to you about that world in terms of film festivals, right? Because science
sure.
fiction is a difficult thing to get into festivals, I think, because unless the festival is a sci-fi festival, which I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about those, but a lot of film festivals are looking for, you know, the story of the drama of the person in real life, and they're not so open to fantasy films. It's kind of like the Academy Awards never likes to give a comedic actor an award. It's kind of like that, I think, with a lot of film festivals. Not that they don't take any sci-fi, but it's like, oh, we have this one night of like one film, because it's such a specific type of world, and that's not what they're gearing towards. But yet you can make political statements, as you were talking about, and can express problems with society through a fantasy or sci-fi picture. So I don't really know what I'm asking you. I just think it's a fantastic world, and it's a sort of a different, when you hear people making sci-fi films, they're not playing the same festival circuit in general. Things do cross over. And that's, I guess, what I'm getting at. Where does that even belong? How do you move with that? What do you, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so when it comes to festivals, if you made an independent film, there's really 6 film festivals in the world where distributors, you know, send people to go hunting. However, those are also the same 6 festivals where a lot of the films that are in there are getting in there through that already have distribution or have some kind of in to the festival. So the six festivals are, watch, I won't be able to name them now. The 6 festivals are Sundance, Toronto, Berlin, Cannes, South by Southwest, and maybe Rotterdam. Some people want Tribeca, maybe. Tribeca would like to be in that group, but it's maybe one step down or something. You know, so, and I'm sure I'm missing, like, there's probably another one out there that I'm just.
Did you say Venice? I don't know if you mentioned Venice.
I didn't mention Venice. Venice is, yeah, I mean, if you win at Venice, you're going to get some kind of notice. So here's the terrible thing. like those festivals I just mentioned, and also others like it, like say Tribeca, they want premieres. So if you premiere your film at a local festival and then you apply for Sundance, your chances of getting in are almost nil. They're almost nil to begin with, but
I was gonna say.
if you premiere at a low, at some other festival, they will probably just put you in the reject pile without even looking at your film. They'll be like, "Is this?" Because you check no on the premiere box.
Right.
So, so there are exceptions, but again, those exceptions are for people who are already on the inside track to those festivals. So the problem with the premiere festivals is it is the lottery. So I think, and I did this for Found in Time. Like I said, all right, what's the next? When I was done with post, what's the next deadline? The next deadline for one of these festivals happened to be Sundance. So I said, all right, I will apply for Sundance because that's my lottery ticket. And then, but the problem is I can't then apply for any other festivals that could premiere before Sundance. Because the shittiest thing you could do is apply for a festival and then you get in and then you withdraw because you're waiting on another festival to say yes. Like that's crap. That's really bad behavior to do to any festival programmer. But also then you could very easily like still not get into Sundance, and now you've basically burned a bridge and you haven't gotten that premiere that you want, that lottery ticket that you wanted. So you basically have to like, pick that one festival that has a deadline close to when you're finished, and then sit on your hands and wait for the inevitable rejection, and then start applying to the other festivals. So that's one way to go. But honestly, if you've made a genre film, horror, fantasy, sci-fi, you may be better off just skipping those 6 festivals and then saying, all right, what are the genre festivals that are around that have deadlines that are close to when I'm done? And I'll start applying for those. It doesn't make sense to submit to anything until you're really done. Like your film is mixed, it's color corrected, it's done, 100% done. No matter, because there are 2 reasons for that. One is that even though programmers will say that they will look at rough cuts, unless you know the programmer personally, you can't rely on them being the one that's actually doing the viewing. It could be somebody who's a volunteer who maybe is not as savvy and will look at this and look at the ungraded footage and go, this looks like shit. I can't watch this. I can't finish this. Or won't be able to get through the sound because the sound is still muddy. An unfinished product is at a real disadvantage. The other thing is that your film might still stand out, might be like, wow, yeah, we love this film. But then the programmer has to make this terrible decision. They've got 15 slots. They've got 20 films that they're down to the final round on. So 5, how many slots did I say? 15 slots. So 5 films are not going to get in. If yours is one of the 5 films, if yours is one of the 20 films that's made it to the finals, but you're not done, then you're still not going to get it. Because if the programmer has all these other films that are done, they'll be like, yeah, that's a safe bet. If your film isn't done, even if it makes it to the final round, then the programmer is taking a real risk that you're going to be finished in time to show. And if you're out of money and you're out of resources, whatever time, there's a good chance you won't be done in time for the thing. And then the program is going to look like a fool because he's going to be screening your not done thing that still sounds like shit. It's not going to happen. So they still reject you. So don't apply until you're really done. The other thing that's worth considering is whether you want to go out on the convention circuit. So like besides festivals, a lot of Comic-Cons, role-playing game cons, like Gen Con being a good example, they also have a film festival component to them or a film screening component to them. And they're always looking for stuff. The difference between a con convention and a festival is that the conventions, because their main focus is on other things, you may not necessarily get the greatest projection space. Like you may not get the greatest projection system. You may not get, like, a lot of times these are held in hotels. So your screening room will be a conference room that's been converted into a screening room. It's probably not going to be soundproof. You may be playing off a DVD or a Blu-ray player. Maybe you're streaming from the website, or you're going to bring a thumb drive. So, it's not going to be the same thing as being in a full-on theater. But I will say that the people who go to conventions are dedicated fans. And if you made something, I'm a big time sci-fi geek and fantasy geek and horror geek. So, I make stuff for me and for the fans. And so I know that, even if the audience is small, they're going to be hardcore. Like I've had convention screenings where I had, maybe only a handful of people in the audience, but the Q&A afterwards lasted 45 minutes, or they followed me outside of the theater and we kept talking, so like, so it was a great experience. I've gotten reviews from podcasts and periodicals, from conventions, and from as well as from genre festivals, because like the people who are dedicated to genre also produce podcasts, also have magazines and websites. So you can get some great reviews and clippings from there. And your audience is predisposed to like your movie, because they're there for genre movies. If you made a genre movie and it screens at a non-genre festival, there's a chance you could get like a very negative audience reaction. Fortunately, it hasn't really happened for me, but
no, it can happen, because if they're expecting, romantic comedies and dramas, and you got some crazy time travel film that you have to think when you watch it, that's a completely different thing. There's nothing wrong with romantic comedies and dramas, but it's a different audience, and it's who that festival is bringing in, unless that festival is really dedicated to doing a sci-fi night where they're really marketing it. But I did want to ask you, so what are your top 3 or 4, whatever sci-fi festivals that are dedicated to science fiction / fantasy? I know some of them cross over. What are those? Like, what do you recommend people? And I don't mean because they're going to get famous. Everybody who, if they're really watching this podcast, knows that's not the deal. That's not what it's about. It's about building your fan base. It's about incremental moving along with your career, and just enjoying being a filmmaker and having a good audience, and not people who were hoping to see, some old school actor walk on screen for a cameo in this melodrama about a woman, I don't know, plowing the field or whatever the hell people do in those films.
I had a great experience at Shriekfest. It's been going for many years now. I think it might be closing in on 20 years. I'm not exactly sure. And they've gotten so big now, they have 2 festivals, the main one in LA, and there's another one down in Florida, which I think is still going. I know the pandemic kind of put a dent in everybody's plans, but so I had a great experience there. The woman who started the festival, Denise Gossett, still runs it, and she started out as an actor in mostly horror movies, and so she has a real love of horror movies, but also sci-fi and fantasy. And she and the programmers have always been super fair to me, and they do as much as humanly possible to like promote the films, and I've always come out of there with some great conversations with folks. I really had a great experience at Gen Con. That's on I guess you could call that on the convention side, but they've really done their best to like create a separate festival experience within the convention. Gen Con is still, I think, the largest gaming convention in North America. I think every year it's at least 50,000 people a day who show up. It takes over 2 hotels. It's so big, out in Indianapolis. And they, so they have, on the one hand, they've got a lot of resources. On the other hand, they're serving so many people that the festival was kind of like something they just did. But like the people who program it have always been really dedicated in terms of bringing in good stuff and like doing their best to like make the projection systems really nice. So I've always had a good experience there. And then they went virtual in 2020, and they made that like one of the best experiences. I had a great experience at the International Horror and Sci-Fi Fantasy Film Festival that was also part of the Phoenix Film Festival. They may have merged the two things because they were happening at the same time. They may merge them together, but they had at that time, I don't know if it's changed since then, but at that time they had like they were screening in a really fantastic theater in Scottsdale, like a real multiplex at Scottsdale. They took over like 2 or 3 screens. One of the things that really I think you should look for in a festival is how they treat the filmmakers. And they always treated me super great. Like they would let me come in and do a quick tech screening like a half hour before the actual screening. So sometimes there's not a lot you can do about the projection system, but maybe you can get them to tweak the volume a little bit or change the color a little bit. And I mean, I don't expect that, but it's always nice when they're willing to do that for you. If you made a horror movie, I would recommend Nevermore. The staff have been there for forever, like for more than 10 years, most of them. And the programming is always really great. They have a mix of like new stuff, and they usually have 1 or 2 like classic movies that they'll screen. It is more horror focused than say sci-fi or fantasy, but my sci-fi film played there. And so the filmmakers I met at Nevermore, I'm still friends with like 8 years later. And they've done a lot to like keep the filmmaking community, like, keep everybody apprised and like in touch with each other. So that was really nice, and so, you're looking for, when you're going to festivals, like obviously the brass ring would be for distributors, for somebody from a distributor to come up to afterwards and go, here's my card, let's make a deal, here's a check. It doesn't usually happen. So, but what you can get from festivals are good reviews. You can get connections to other filmmakers. You can get connections to fans. Sometimes you can get fans to buy stuff. One of the advantages of genre filmmaking is that fans are very attached to physical media still. So if you make a bunch of nice Blu-rays of your project and you take it have it under your arm with you at the festival, you might be able to sell it there to fans. Obviously check with the festival organizers first, because not all of them are like, approve of that. But like, I've had people come up to me, in the age of streaming and go, hey, can I buy your film? Like, do you have a copy of it? And yeah, like I would say more than like sort of maybe, except for like super cinephiles, like I'd say genre fans are probably the most dedicated to preserving physical media. So if you made a genre film, like set aside a little bit of money for like some extra Blu-rays, because that can be a sale opportunity. And I wouldn't worry too much about piracy or having that stuff online, because that's going to happen anyway when you make a distribution deal. Like 2-3 days after my film came out, somebody had already pirated it and put it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. I mean,
right, but it's about building a fan base, and I still want to buy a Found in Time t-shirt, by the way. I don't know why I haven't been given that opportunity. La, la, la.
I have to,
because I think, I think that sci-fi, I think genre, like what you're talking about, genre fans, is they are dedicated. They will buy the shirt because they'll wear it. It's an interesting community of people when you really get into a niche of anything, but certainly science fiction people, because that's how they hear about different things. So sometimes, like I've definitely had friends who are like, hey, what's that t-shirt you're wearing? Oh, it's this movie. Oh, I got to go see it now. Right.
Yeah.
And no, you're not going to make millions of dollars off of it. But, every fan you bring in that becomes dedicated to you builds your following and helps you move forward, because unfortunately, a lot of film festivals now are looking at how big is your following, how
Right.
dedicated is your fan base. Like there are people who purchase clicks or purchase whatever likes or subscribers, and that's not real people, and they can see through that. But if you have, and granted, it takes years to do this, but if you have a decent fan base that's really interacting with you, that cares about your work, it is going to make a difference. And honestly, just as an artist, even if you only have 5 fans, but they're totally into you, that's great. That's 5 people. That's
Oh
5
yeah.
people supporting
Yeah.
you. It's like what you're talking about. Having a supportive network can be family and friends, but it can be your fans.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
One of the more successful some of the more successful filmmakers I know, I met on that circuit, and they make, really low budget horror movies every couple of years. They crowdfund them, and a lot of the people crowdfunding them have been their fans that they met on the circuit, or filmmakers like me. Like, yeah, I mean, if I hear Scott's making another movie, I'll put in $25 or something to help him make his movie, because I like his work. So it's fan. So there's also a lot of crossover between fans and filmmakers, like, and they've been very, they've been very loyal to me. They've gone and watched my non-sci-fi stuff too. So there's so yeah, if you can, it is a great way to build a loyal, genuine fan base that can help you with your future projects, that will go out and write good things about your existing project, that might buy some of your stuff down, buy a copy of your film. But even if they don't, like, they'll give 4 or 5 stars on Amazon, that kind of thing.
Right. They might purchase it online, like instead of just
Yeah.
renting it, they may actually purchase the film to have.
Yep.
And I do think there's something to be said for the old MST, keep circulating the tapes thing, right?
Oh,
For
yeah.
Mystery Science Theater, right? That's how they got going, because they were like, we don't care, go ahead, record it. This is when people had VHS tapes and probably Betamax or something was going. I don't know, it's not that old, but that's how they got their brand out there, was just like, what, fine, share it for free. Here's the t-shirt, write a postcard to us, we'll send you something, in order to show that you're committed to your fans and they're committed to you, and you're not so precious about your stuff. Yes, we all want to make money, we want to make our money back, we'd like to make a profit, but at the end of the day, an artist needs people following and watching their work more than anything else. And there are other ways, as we talked about earlier, to earn money in the industry, outside the industry, and certainly keep following your dream of someday hoping to just focus on making films. So I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's always a joy